Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The lobster bisque was getting cold, but Emily hadn't touched it. She sat across from me at the Lakeside Resort's five-star restaurant, her manicured fingers drumming against the white tablecloth like she was sending Morse code to someone who actually mattered. The engagement ring I'd been carrying around for 3 weeks felt like a lead weight in my jacket pocket. "Jonas," she said, not looking at me. Her voice had that tone, the one she used when she was about to rearrange my entire world without asking permission first. "We need to talk." I set down my wine glass and leaned back in the leather chair. The dining room buzzed with the quiet conversations of couples who probably weren't about to detonate their relationships over overpriced seafood. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the lake stretching out under a gray October sky, peaceful as a postcard. Too bad the same couldn't be said for our table. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice level. "What's on your mind?" Emily finally looked at me then, and I saw something in her green eyes that made my stomach drop. Not guilt. Emily never felt guilty about anything. It was excitement, the kind of thrill she got when she landed a big marketing account or found the perfect dress on sale. She was enjoying this. "I've been thinking about us," she said, smoothing her blonde hair behind her ear, "about where we're going, about what I want. And—" she took a breath, like she was preparing for a presentation to her corporate board. "I met someone who makes me feel alive, Jonas, really alive. For the first time in years." The words hit me like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. Years of marriage to Emily had taught me that showing weakness was like throwing chum to a shark. "Funny," I said, picking up my fork and taking a bite of salmon. "I thought I was alive." Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in irritation. This wasn't going according to her script. She'd probably expected me to beg, to make a scene, to give her the dramatic reaction she could use to justify whatever she'd already decided to do. "Don't be sarcastic," she snapped. "This is serious. I'm trying to be honest with you." "Honest?" I nodded slowly, chewing thoughtfully. "That's refreshing. How long has this honesty been going on?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked, and for just a moment I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. But Emily recovered quickly. She always did. "That doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is that I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep living this lie." "What lie is that exactly?" "That we're happy, that this marriage means something." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that intimate tone she used when she really wanted to sell someone on something. "Come on, Jonas. You must feel it too. We're like roommates. We barely talk anymore. When's the last time we really connected?" I could have pointed out that we barely talked because every conversation with Emily felt like a negotiation. I could have mentioned that we hadn't connected because she spent most evenings at the office or out with friends, coming home just long enough to complain about her day and fall asleep watching Netflix. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I signaled the waiter for another bottle of wine. "So what are you proposing?" I asked. She straightened up, back in her element now. "I think we should separate. Take some time apart to figure out what we really want." "And you've already figured out what you want?" "Yes." She lifted her chin, defiant. "I want to be with Blake." Blake. Of course it was Blake. Blake Sandell, the interior designer she'd hired to redo our living room 6 months ago. Blake with his perfectly styled hair and his collection of vintage band t-shirts that probably cost more than my truck payment. Blake who called everything inspired and authentic, while charging people $3,000 to paint their walls beige. "Blake Sandell," I said. "You know him." Hard to forget a guy who spent 2 weeks in our house, explaining why our furniture was emotionally disconnected from our space. Emily's cheeks flushed. "He understands me, Jonas. He sees who I really am." "And who is that exactly?" "Someone who deserves more than this." She gestured around the restaurant, at the elegant surroundings I'd chosen specifically because I knew she'd love them. "Someone who deserves passion, adventure, a partner who actually cares about making her happy." The waiter appeared with our wine, going through the whole ritual of letting me taste it first. I nodded my approval, watching Emily fidget with her napkin while he poured. She was getting impatient now, probably expecting me to break down or start shouting. Instead, I raised my glass. "To new beginnings," I said. She blinked again, clearly thrown. "Jonas, you're right," I continued, my voice perfectly calm. "We haven't been happy, and if Blake makes you feel alive, then you should be with Blake." "Really?" She looked suspicious now, like she was waiting for the catch. "Really?" I took a sip of wine. It was excellent, full-bodied with hints of cherry and oak. "I want you to be happy, Emily. I always have." She stared at me for a long moment. Then her expression shifted to something that might have been disappointment. Maybe she'd wanted a fight after all. Drama made for better stories, and Emily loved being the center of a good story. "Well," she said finally, "good. I'm glad you're being mature about this." "Of course," I smiled. "Though I do have one question." "What?" "When you say you want to take time apart to figure things out, you've already figured things out, haven't you? You and Blake." The flush in her cheeks deepened. "I told you, that doesn't matter, right?" I nodded. "So when you say separate, what you really mean is you want me to move out of our house so you and Blake can play house without the inconvenience of having your husband around." "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once in her life, Emily seemed to be at a loss for words. "You know what?" I said, standing up and pulling out my wallet. "Let's not ruin a perfectly good dinner with logistics. We can figure out the details when we get home." I dropped enough cash on the table to cover the meal and a generous tip, then leaned down and kissed the top of her head. She smelled like expensive shampoo and the perfume I'd bought her for her birthday. The birthday where she'd spent the entire evening texting someone she claimed was her assistant. "Enjoy your bisque," I said. "I'm going to take a walk by the lake." I left her sitting there, probably still trying to figure out why I wasn't playing my assigned role in her little drama. The truth was, I wasn't surprised. I'd seen the signs for months, the late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started locking her phone. I'd even hired a private investigator, though I hadn't needed the photos he'd provided to confirm what I already knew. What Emily didn't realize was that I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. While she was busy planning her new life with Blake, I'd been making preparations of my own. The lake was calm in the fading light, its surface reflecting the first stars. I walked along the shore, hands in my pockets, thinking about the ring that would be going back to the jewelry store tomorrow. 3 weeks ago, I'd been planning to spend the rest of my life with Emily. Now I was planning something entirely different. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Where did you go? We should talk about this." I typed back. "Already said everything that needed saying. Drive safe." Then I walked back to the resort, got in my truck, and drove home to our sprawling Victorian house on Elm Street. Emily could find her own way back. She was a resourceful woman. She'd figure it out. Besides, I had work to do. The house felt different when I walked in alone that night. Bigger somehow, like Emily's absence had created a vacuum that made every sound echo. I stood in the foyer for a moment, looking around at the space Blake had reimagined for us. Neutral colors, clean lines, everything carefully arranged to look effortlessly elegant. It was beautiful, I had to admit. It was also completely soulless. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, loosening my tie as I went. Emily wouldn't be home for hours. She'd probably drive around for a while, working up her courage. Maybe call Blake or her friend Sienna to rehearse her victim speech. That gave me plenty of time to do what I'd been planning. Her suitcase was still on the bed where she'd left it that morning, half packed with the kind of clothes she wore when she wanted to make an impression. Designer jeans, silk blouses, the red dress that made her feel powerful. I'd watched her pack, pretending to read the newspaper while she selected each item with the care of a general choosing weapons for battle. Now I opened the suitcase and began going through it systematically. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I already had all the evidence I needed. I was looking for something I could use. I found it in the zippered compartment on the side. A second phone. A cheap prepaid model, the kind you could buy at any convenience store with cash. The kind people used when they didn't want their activities traced back to them. Emily had been careful to hide it, wrapping it in a silk scarf and tucking it beneath her makeup bag. But not careful enough. The phone was still charged. Emily might be duplicitous, but she was never careless about technology. I powered it on and started scrolling through the messages. And with each text, my understanding of my wife's betrayal grew deeper and more complete. The affair had been going on for 4 months, not the few weeks I'd suspected. It had started while Blake was working on our house. Continued through my birthday, through our anniversary dinner, through the weekend we'd spent at her parents' lake house, where she'd told me she loved me and wanted to work on our marriage. But it wasn't just the timeline that made my jaw clench. It was the content. "Can't wait to have you in our bed when he's finally gone," she'd written. "He's so clueless. Asked me yesterday if I was happy." I almost laughed. "The house will be perfect once we get rid of all his ugly furniture. Our bed. Our house. My furniture. Pieces I'd inherited from my grandfather, restored with my own hands." I kept scrolling, my anger building with each message. They'd made fun of my clothes, my truck, the way I ate cereal for dinner sometimes when Emily was working late. They'd laughed about my job. I was a renovation contractor, not glamorous enough for Emily's new image of herself. They'd even joked about my proposal plans. "He's been acting weird lately," Emily had texted 2 weeks ago. "I think he might be planning to propose. Poor guy has no idea what's coming." Blake's response: "Should we tell him? Put him out of his misery?" "Not yet. I want to enjoy this a little longer." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a game to them. I was entertainment, a source of amusement while they planned their future in my house, with my money, surrounded by my things. The phone buzzed in my hand. A new message from Blake. How did he take it? "You coming over tonight?" I stared at the text for a long moment, then typed back. "Still talking. He's taking it hard. Might be a while." The response came immediately. "Poor baby. Want me to come get you?" "No. Better to handle this myself. Don't want him to get suspicious." "You're amazing. Love you." I set the phone aside and walked to the window. Outside, Elm Street was quiet, porch lights glowing in the darkness. Mrs. Vickery across the street was probably settling in with her evening tea and whatever gossip she'd collected during the day. The Hendersons next door had their TV on. I could see the blue flicker through their living room curtains. Normal people living normal lives, while my world had just shifted on its axis. But here's the thing about having your world shifted. It gives you a new perspective on everything. And from where I was standing now, I could see possibilities I'd never noticed before. I went downstairs to my study, the one room in the house Blake hadn't been allowed to touch, and fired up my computer. Emily thought I was just a contractor, good with my hands, but not much else. What she didn't know was that I'd been an electrical engineer before I started my renovation business. I understood systems, how they worked, how they could be manipulated. And in the digital age, everything was a system. It took me about 20 minutes to access Emily's real phone records, her email accounts, her social media profiles. She'd been sloppy, using the same passwords for everything, never thinking that her clueless husband might have the skills to uncover her secrets. What I found was even worse than I'd expected. The affair was just the beginning. Emily and Blake had been planning this for months, mapping out how they'd get me out of the house, how they'd divide our assets, how they'd spin the story to make Emily look like the victim of a loveless marriage. They'd even discussed ways to make me look unstable, unreliable. Insurance for the divorce proceedings. There were emails to divorce lawyers, research on Massachusetts property law, even a draft of a restraining order application claiming I'd been emotionally controlling and had anger issues. All lies, but lies that would be hard to disprove once they were on record. I printed everything, organizing it into neat folders while I planned my next moves. Emily thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She had no idea I'd been watching her moves, learning her strategy, preparing my own game plan. My phone rang around midnight. "Emily." "Jonas?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Can we talk when I get home?" "Sure," I said, not looking up from my computer screen. "I'll be here." "Are you okay? You sound strange." "Just tired. It's been a long day." "I know this is hard," she said, and I could hear her practicing her sympathy voice. "But I think this could be good for both of us, a chance to start fresh." "You might be right," I said. There was a pause. Really? I've been doing some thinking since dinner. Maybe we both need a change." "Oh," she sounded almost disappointed. "Well, good. I'm glad you're being so understanding." "I'll see you when you get home," I said and hung up. I spent the next hour transferring money from our joint accounts to my personal account. Money I'd earned. Money that would disappear into Blake's pockets if I left it where it was. I canceled the credit cards Emily used for her shopping trips, changed the passwords on all our shared accounts, and made a few other adjustments that would become apparent to her over the next few days. Then I went upstairs and packed a bag. Emily found me in the guest room when she finally came home around 2 in the morning. She stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. My clothes laid out on the bed, my shaving kit on the dresser. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked up from folding a shirt. "Giving you what you want. Space to figure things out." "You're leaving?" "For now. I figured you'd be more comfortable here without me around." She stepped into the room, and I caught a whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. Blake's cologne, the expensive stuff he wore to make himself feel important. "Jonas, you don't have to." "I want to," I said. "You were right at dinner. We need time apart. I'm going to stay at Tommy's for a while, give you room to breathe." Tommy Morrison was my best friend and business partner, a former police officer who ran the Green Lantern, the dive bar where locals went to drink and complain about their lives. He'd offered me his couch months ago when he first suspected Emily was cheating. Now I was finally going to take him up on it. "How long?" Emily asked. "However long it takes." I zipped up my bag and turned to face her.
Her name is saved as electrician. You've been calling the electrician at midnight for 4 months.
How stupid do you think I am?
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
"I want you to be happy, Em. If Blake makes you happy, then that's what matters." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. The Jonas she'd married would have fought for her, would have begged her to reconsider, would have made it easy for her to paint him as the desperate, clingy husband she needed him to be for her story to work. This Jonas had other plans. "I'll come by tomorrow to get more of my things," I said, kissing her cheek as I walked past her toward the door. "Take care of yourself." I left her standing in the guest room, probably wondering why her carefully orchestrated drama had turned into such a quiet, civilized conversation. But Emily was adaptable. She'd figure out a way to spin this too. What she wouldn't figure out, at least not right away, was that I'd taken her burner phone with me. Tommy Morrison looked like what he was, a cop who'd traded his badge for a bartender's apron, but never quite shook the habit of watching everyone who walked through his door. He was wiping down glasses when I arrived at the Green Lantern the next morning, the October sun streaming through windows that had seen better decades. "Well, well," he said, not looking up from his work. "Look what the cat dragged in. You look like hell, Jonas." "Feel worse," I said, dropping my bag by the bar and climbing onto a stool. "You still offering that couch?" Emily finally show her true colors? In Technicolor." I pulled out the burner phone and set it on the bar between us. "Found this in her suitcase." Tommy set down the glass he'd been cleaning and picked up the phone, scrolling through the messages with the same methodical attention he'd once used to examine crime scenes. His expression grew darker with each screen. 4 months, he said finally. 4 months. In your house. In our bed." Tommy set the phone down and reached under the bar, producing a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses, despite the fact that it wasn't even noon yet. "What do you want to do about it?" That was Tommy. No judgment, no lectures about forgiveness or working things out. Just a simple question about what came next. "I want them to understand what it feels like," I said, accepting the glass he poured for me. "I want them to know what it's like to have someone they trust make them look like fools." "Revenge is a dish best served cold," Tommy said, raising his glass. "But it's also a dish that can give you indigestion if you're not careful about the ingredients." "I'm not talking about anything illegal." "Good. Because I like you, Jonas, but I'm not visiting you in prison." We drank in comfortable silence for a moment, the whiskey burning away some of the anger that had been building since I'd read those text messages. The Green Lantern was the kind of place where people came to forget their troubles, at least temporarily. Dark wood, dim lighting, the smell of beer and fried food mixing with decades of cigarette smoke that no amount of cleaning could completely eliminate. "So what's the plan?" Tommy asked. I told him. Not everything. Some things were better kept to myself, but enough to let him know I wasn't planning to take Emily's betrayal lying down. Tommy listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow, but never suggesting I should take the high road or be the bigger person. "You know," he said when I finished, "most guys in your situation would be crying in their beer and feeling sorry for themselves. Most guys don't have access to their wife's secret phone." "True," Tommy grinned. "You always were too smart for your own good. Emily never appreciated that about you. Emily never appreciated a lot of things about me." My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Hope you slept well. I'm going to work. We should talk tonight about next steps." I showed the message to Tommy, who snorted. "Next steps. Like she's planning a marketing campaign." "Maybe she is," I typed back. Take your time. I'm in no hurry. You're enjoying this, Tommy observed. A little. I had to admit it felt good to be the one with the inside information for once. Is that wrong? Wrong? Hell no. Woman cheats on you for 4 months. Plans to take your house and make you look like the bad guy? I'd say a little enjoyment is the least you deserve. The door chimed, and Mrs. Vickery shuffled in, her gray hair perfectly set despite the early hour. She was probably in her 70s, but she moved through town like a woman on a mission, collecting gossip and distributing it with the efficiency of a postal worker. "Morning, Mrs. V," Tommy called. "Little early for your usual, isn't it?" "I'm not here for drinking, Tommy Morrison, and you know it." She settled onto the stool next to me, her sharp eyes taking in my appearance with interest. "Jonas Mercer, don't you look like a man with a story to tell?" "Morning, Mrs. Vickery. Heard Emily came home very late last night. Saw her car pull in around 2. You weren't with her." It wasn't a question. Mrs. Vickery didn't ask questions when she already knew the answers. "We're taking some time apart," I said carefully. "Are you now?" She accepted the cup of coffee Tommy poured for her, adding 3 sugars and enough cream to turn it beige. "And would this time apart have anything to do with that handsome interior designer who's been spending so much time at your house?" Tommy and I exchanged glances. Mrs. Vickery's intelligence network was legendary in our town, but even I was impressed by how quickly she'd connected the dots. "Blake Sandell," she continued, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Divorced last year. Wife caught him with his yoga instructor. Or was it his personal trainer? Hard to keep track with that one." "Blake's divorced?" I asked. "Oh yes. Messy business too. She took him for everything he was worth, which wasn't much once the lawyers got through with him." Mrs. Vickery sipped her coffee and smiled. "Man's been living in that little apartment above the flower shop ever since. Barely scraping by, from what I hear." This was news to me. Emily's texts had made it sound like Blake was some kind of successful entrepreneur, not a broke divorcee looking for his next meal ticket. "Of course," Mrs. Vickery continued, "some women find that kind of man attractive, the wounded bird type. Makes them feel needed. Emily does like fixing things," I said. Mrs. Vickery's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Though from what I've observed, she might have bitten off more than she can chew with this particular project." She finished her coffee, left exact change on the bar, and headed for the door. Then she paused and looked back at me. "You know, Jonas, if you ever need someone to water your plants or keep an eye on the house while you're staying elsewhere, I'd be happy to help. I'm very observant." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. After she left, Tommy shook his head admiringly. "That woman knows more about this town than the mayor and the police chief combined." "Think she'd be willing to share information with you?" "Probably. She always liked you better than Emily anyway." "Really?" "Really," said Emily had airs and didn't appreciate what she had. Tommy refilled our glasses. "Mrs. V has good instincts about people." I spent the rest of the morning helping Tommy with inventory, grateful for the physical work that kept my hands busy while my mind processed everything I'd learned. Blake wasn't the successful catch Emily thought he was. He was a predator looking for his next victim. And Emily, for all her intelligence and business savvy, had walked right into his trap. The irony wasn't lost on me. While she was planning to leave me for a better life, she was actually trading down in every way that mattered. Blake was broke, recently divorced, and apparently had a history of cheating. Emily was about to discover that the grass wasn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it was just different shades of brown. My phone rang around noon. Emily again. "Hi," she said, her voice artificially bright. "How are you doing?" "Fine. You?" "Good. Listen, I was thinking we should probably talk about dividing up our things. You know, so we both know what belongs to who." What she meant was, I want to make sure Blake and I get everything valuable before you realize what's happening. "Sure," I said, though most of the furniture was mine before we got married. There was a pause. "Well, yes, but we've been married for 3 years. I think I have some claim to the things we've shared." "The things Blake redesigned, you mean?" Another pause, longer this time. "I don't think Blake has anything to do with this conversation." "Doesn't he?" "Jonas." "It's okay, Em. I know about Blake. I've known for a while." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was smaller, more uncertain than I'd heard it in years. "What do you know?" "Everything," I said simply. "I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything. You made your choice. I'm just making mine. What does that mean? I looked around the Green Lantern, at Tommy organizing bottles behind the bar, at the afternoon regulars starting to drift in for lunch and beer. It was a good place, an honest place, full of people who said what they meant and meant what they said. It means I'm not going to make this easy for you, I said. Then I hung up and turned off my phone. Emily's first mistake was underestimating how quickly word travels in a small town. Her second mistake was thinking she could control the narrative. By the time I walked into Morrison's hardware store the next morning, half the town already knew something was up with the Mercers. Jonas, Bill Morrison, Tommy's uncle and the store's owner, waved me over to the paint counter. Heard you might be doing some redecorating. News travels fast, I said. Faster when Mrs. Vickery's involved. Bill grinned and lowered his voice. She mentioned you might need some supplies for a project. Said to put whatever you need on the house account. Mrs. Vickery's house account was legendary. A running tab she used to help neighbors in need while maintaining everyone's dignity. The fact that she'd extended it to me meant I had the town's unofficial blessing for whatever I was planning. I appreciate that, Bill. Don't mention it. Emily never did appreciate what she had with you. He handed me a paint chip. This color might work for what you have in mind. It's called Truth and Consequences. I had to smile at that. Even the paint names were conspiring in my favor. I spent the morning gathering supplies, not for painting, but for the project I'd been planning since I found Emily's phone. By the time I was finished, I had everything I needed to give my wife and her boyfriend a lesson in consequences they'd never forget. My phone had 17 missed calls from Emily by the time I turned it back on. I called her back from Tommy's office, putting the phone on speaker so he could hear both sides of the conversation. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. Running errands. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Her voice climbed an octave. Someone posted screenshots of my private messages on Facebook. My mother called me crying. My boss wants to see me in his office this afternoon. What's wrong is that someone is trying to ruin my life. I looked at Tommy, who was trying not to laugh. "That's terrible," I said. "Do you have any idea who would do something like that?" "It had to be you. You're the only one who could have accessed my accounts. Emily, I don't even know your Facebook password," which was technically true. I'd used her email to reset it, but I'd never actually known the original password. "This is harassment, Jonas. I could have you arrested." "For what?" "I haven't done anything illegal." "You violated my privacy." "Did I? Or did someone else decide to share information that was already out there?" I kept my voice calm, reasonable. "Maybe you should ask Blake if he's been showing those messages to anyone." "Blake would never, wouldn't he?" "How well do you really know him, Em?" The silence on the other end told me she was starting to have doubts. Good. Doubt was exactly what I wanted her to feel. "I want you to stop this," she said finally. "Stop what?" "Whatever you're planning. This isn't like you. Maybe you never knew me as well as you thought." After I hung up, Tommy poured himself a beer and offered me one. "You're really going to put her through the ringer, aren't you?" "She put herself through the ringer. I'm just making sure everyone gets to watch." The afternoon brought more entertainment. Emily's friend Sienna called me around 3, her voice dripping with false concern. "Jonas, sweetie, I'm so sorry about what you're going through." Sienna Walsh was Emily's closest friend and biggest enabler, the kind of woman who encouraged bad behavior and then acted shocked when there were consequences. She worked in HR at a local insurance company, which made her an expert at saying nothing while sounding deeply concerned. "Thank you," I said. "I just want you to know that some of us saw this coming. Emily's been so unhappy lately, and when someone's unhappy, they sometimes make poor choices." "Is that what you call it? Poor choices?" "Well, I mean, having an affair is never the right thing to do, but sometimes people get confused about what they want." "Confused?" I repeated the word like I was testing how it tasted. "Is that what Emily told you, that she was confused?" "She's been struggling, Jonas. This whole thing with Blake. It's not really about him. It's about her trying to figure out who she is, by sleeping with another man in my bed." Sienna made a little gasping sound, like she was scandalized by my bluntness. "I don't think we need to get into the details." "Why not?" "Emily didn't seem to mind sharing the details with Blake. Or with you, apparently. I think you're upset, which is understandable, but I'm not upset, Sienna. I'm enlightened. For the first time in years, I can see everything clearly." "What does that mean?" "It means Emily made her choice, and now she gets to live with it, and so does everyone who helped her make it." I hung up before she could respond. Tommy, who'd been listening from behind the bar, shook his head. You know she's going to run straight to Emily with everything you just said. I'm counting on it. You really have thought this through, haven't you? Every angle. I pulled out a notebook and showed him the timeline I'd been working on. Emily thinks she's been so clever, but she's left a trail a mile wide. Bank records, credit card statements, phone logs. It's all there if you know where to look. And you know where to look. I know exactly where to look. The Green Lantern filled up with the usual crowd as evening approached. Contractors and shop owners, retirees and shift workers, people who'd lived in this town long enough to know everyone's business and weren't shy about sharing opinions. Word about Emily's affair had spread through the community like ripples on a pond, and the consensus wasn't in her favor. Always thought she was too good for her own good, said Pete Hendricks, who ran the auto repair shop. Woman like that, she's never satisfied with what she's got. Shame about Jonas, though, added Mary Chen from the flower shop. He's good people, deserves better than what she's putting him through. I listened to the conversation swirling around me, amazed at how quickly public opinion had shifted. 24 hours ago, Emily had been the successful marketing executive with the perfect marriage. Now she was the cheating wife who'd betrayed one of the town's most well-liked residents. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the marina in an hour. Minest Blake. I showed the message to Tommy, who raised an eyebrow. Think it's a trap? Only one way to find out. The marina was nearly empty when I arrived. Just a few die-hard fishermen preparing their boats for the next morning's expedition. Blake was waiting for me at